Hey guys, it's been a while. I hope you guys been doing well, and life has been treating you fairly. I know some people have been looking forward to seeing some more guides, but this video has been at the top of my head for a long while now. And honestly, I felt like I couldn't really make any other videos before covering this topic. Don't worry, I'll still be making more guides later on, and as requested in the beginner's guide comment section, the next guide will be about teamfighting. So please look forward to that in the near future. Before we dive into the video, I would like to ask that if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and check out my stream over at twitch.tv/Esther. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy the video. So for those of you who stumbled upon this video and don't know what game I'm talking about, it's a small game called Eternal Return, and it's a unique battle royale where you have to collect materials in different zones to build your loadout. Then contest rare materials at the start of each day or night to build stronger equipment to increase your chance of being the last surviving team on the island. Chances are you've either not heard of it, or heard it was a dead game outside of Asia. However, you can actually reliably get games outside of Asia servers, especially in NA and EU. It's also free on Steam and you can download it and play it right now. So if it's doing so well in the East, why hasn't it been able to gain more attention in the West? Well, that's what we're going to explore in this video. To begin, we have to look at early access to gauge how it did during its very early stages. And if you notice, Eternal Return did actually have a spike of interest during the early access. If you look at the Steam charts, you will notice that its peak was actually around 50,000 players. This actually played as a very big detriment to Eternal Return, as it had a number of very glaring problems to it. While it was a very unique take to the BR genre, ER was a very complex game due to a number of factors. First off, there was a lot of recipes that you had to memorize, such as cooking food and crafting traps to name a few. It was also very punishing as a BR, as sometimes if you encountered someone early, your run was pretty much guaranteed to be over. And to make it even worse, Eternal Return is a MOBA, which is a very notorious genre for having a learning curve due to the variety of characters you interact with. All of these really ruined a lot of people's first impressions of the game, and to make it even worse, the company that made Eternal Return, Nimble Neuron, stumbled onto a lot of investors for this game, and didn't really know how to market the game internationally. If you want to see for yourself what the game looked like back then, you can check out a video from a streamer that Nimble Neuron decided to sponsor at the time, XQC. Eternal Return also had 3 game modes: solos, duos, and squads, and a ranked variant for each of them. Then later, the for fun game mode Cobalt Protocol came out, totaling up to having 7 different queues. This became a huge problem for ER, for when a lot of the player base inevitably left, the remaining players were divided up into these 7 queues, which made a lot less games pop, which caused even more players to leave due to being under the impression of the game being dead, which is a very fair take because at the end of early access, it really was a dead game. However, since ER has left early access, it has had a very stable player base of around 20,000 online at a time at its peak for well over a year now on Steam, which is something that this game has not seen in early access at all. So what did they change? First, the game modes went down to only squads, reducing the amount of game modes from 7 to 3. Normal mode, ranked mode, and Cobalt Protocol. They also had to slightly rework a lot of characters' kits to fit the squad's game mode, as the kits were built more for solos, as it was the most popular mode in terms of competitive play. Which begs the question, out of the 3, why did they choose squads? While solos was considered to be the competitive side of the game, squads was actually the most popular for casual players. Which makes sense because squads allowed you to play with your friends. So they decided to make Eternal Return a squads-only game, which was the correct decision in the long run, despite the amount of negative reviews this game got due to the players complaining about removing solos. Next, they simplified a lot of the mechanics in the game. You used to have to memorize a lot of different crafting recipes, but now you don't have to memorize any recipe. Need to cook food? Get some basic food and go to a campfire. Need cameras for vision? Kill some bats or ravens, or spend some credits to drone them in. Even when making your loadout doesn't require you to memorize anything. And if you've been playing Eternal Return for a while now, is something that I actually recommend. You just click some items, hit generate routing. You can also see what other items you can make on that route as well. You then set your tactical skill, augments, finally your late game items, and that's it. If you want to do some testing, Eternal Return even has a practice tool that allows you to try any character or any skin for free. They even have some innovative things that help new players, like something small such as highlighting the first loot cluster blue so players are incentivized to loot that cluster, or something larger such as having Professor Nadia giving you suggestions on what to do during your match so you're not lost on what to do. You can even customize her on what suggestions to give you if you feel like confident on some things or feel like you're lacking in others. By the way, whoever gave the suggestions, I hope got a pay raise or something, because in my opinion, this is by far the biggest thing that's helping out new players figure out this game the most. And lastly, Eternal Return went from being brutally punishing to one of the least punishing BRs I have ever played. To start, when you die, you actually revive for free up until day 3, so long as your team doesn't fully wipe. However, they may even change that aspect in later seasons to make it so it's just impossible to wipe before day 3. After day 3, if you die, your team can just revive you by spending some credits and a few seconds at a kiosk. So if Eternal Return solved a lot of issues on complexity, and has even found growth in Asia, why is it still struggling to find footing in the international gaming space? There may be a few reasons to why this is. One possible reason is that the 50k peak is still affecting ER today. Hear me out. One of the most important impressions that need to be positive for gamers is the first impression of the game. And with a lot of players who have tried the game and most likely had a bad time in the early access, it makes a lot of sense that they're most likely not willing to try the game again. And with word being that ER is a dead game outside of Asia definitely does not help either. Another possible reason is that a lot of money from investors has already been spent in early access for marketing. And this is probably the biggest reason why Eternal Return has not been able to market very well other than the occasional sponsored stream lately. They hosted a lot of different events, some examples being the Labs tourneys, where a bunch of streamers with some ER partners competed to win some money that gets donated to a charity of their choice. Or the Gen G partnership, where Gen G sponsored streamers were paid to play the game. And it's unfortunate too, because one of the biggest complaints of Eternal Return right now is the matchmaking, specifically in normal mode being too broad, and the only way to solve that is for the player base to grow. However, I do actually have a question for you guys. If Nimble Neuron had enough money to push international marketing right now, do we actually think that it's going to grow a player base a good amount? Because in my opinion, as of right now, I don't actually think so. And the reason for that is because there's still a big problem in Eternal Return that isn't really being talked about, and is still affecting the new players to this day. That reason is the fact that Eternal Return still does not tell new players some mechanics that can actually help them tremendously. And if they don't know these mechanics, they will be put at a pretty big disadvantage. Let me give you a smaller example. In Season 7, if you press P and open a crafting menu, on the right side you will see a list of items that are basically shortcuts to drone them in so you don't actually have to search them. Below that tab, you will see a section that just says drone with nothing in it. This has a really nice function for building your base loadout, where if you miss any items or your loadout requires for you to drone something in, instead of clicking through your list items on the top right, the materials will show up in that section. And if you are wondering, this is not a new feature of Season 7. No, this feature has been in the VPAD since most likely Season 1. And the only reason I found out about this was by randomly stumbling upon it during one of my matches. I don't know why this is not told to new players. It makes droning a lot easier. Now let's talk about a bigger topic. Loot clusters. If you don't know, in Eternal Return, materials are not completely randomized in their zones. Instead, they are organized in these loot clusters, which there are about 4 of them in each zones before being shuffled. Basically, if you loot an unlooted cluster, you're pretty much guaranteed to get all the items you need in that zone. Now, by simply knowing and understanding how this works, you will most likely finish a lot faster than by somebody who doesn't. So it would make sense that Eternal Return would teach you about this, or at the very least have some sort of indicator that would entice you to loot the cluster. And to their credit they do, but only for your first cluster. Look, I get it that the argument would be that loot clusters kind of matter a little less in subsequent zones due to them having a chance being looted already. But here's the thing. In earlier season, they increased the loot pool for each cluster so all loot boxes are full. And not only that, in this season, they decreased the amount of items required for each piece of equipment to be fully crafted. So with both of these together, it's actually rare for you to not find everything in one cluster anymore. So why not just extend the loot cluster indicator to until the players finish their base build? And also, why not just tell players about the significance of loot clusters and the droning section in the tutorial? Maybe add the indicators in the tutorial as well. Speaking of the tutorial, there's some noticeable problems within it as well. First, Gaijin being the character in the second section is probably the worst character they chose for this. They make the player build her as an auto attacker, which gives players the wrong idea about her as she is a spellcaster instead. Not only that, she's also a bit of a complex character play. So I honestly think they should switch Gaijin for someone like Aya, who is in my opinion the best beginner character to play for a backliner. It is also missing some topics such as cooking and reviving, which are both mechanics that the player needs to know. Yes, I know that these topics are covered in the guide, but the tutorial takes around 15 to 20 minutes to do fully, taking your time. Telling a new player after they finish the tutorial to then read the guide just feels like it will give them a negative impression about the game. If I was a new player, I would expect that the tutorial would at least give me the bare minimum on how the game works, so I could just hop into a match and play. Instead, I think we should extend the tutorial for another 5-ish minutes to add a new section in the tutorial that covers these topics, so the guide can be of a more optional information section that players can look up specific stuff. You see, Eternal Return is a very unique game with a sizable learning curve to it. Making unnecessary bumps and walls at the start is just going to funnel out loads of players before they get the chance to actually experience the game. And this just worsens due to the fact that matchmaking can pitch new players against veterans because of the smaller player base. Do I think these changes will somehow save all of Eternal Return? No. But I do think it will at least help new players understand the game a lot better. So when they most likely will lose to these veterans, at least they won't exit the game feeling like they are completely lost. Anyways, that's going to be it. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have, give the video a like, subscribe for more Eternal Return content, and comment down below what you think they can do to make ERA a smoother experience for new players. Do you agree with me? Or do you disagree? I'd like to know down below. Have a good rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.